Hello everybody and welcome back to Cupid, a visual novel. So, in the last time we had a very long episode. So I'm hoping the chapter's gonna be a little shorter this time, not gonna lie. Like, I don't care how many chapters there are, like, I feel like that chapter should have been separated into, like, maybe another chapter, maybe 2 more chapters from that one chapter. But that's my personal opinion. Let's get into it, and continue. So I always press start, but not this time. Let's see. We're on chapter 5, I believe. Yeah. Take revenge for me. I'm sorry, you can do that on your own. I want nothing to do with this. Rosa's hands were over her head. She pressed herself into a corner painting. I thought that bird was coming from outside, but no, it's in the game. It's in the freaking game. Alright. She has never heard Mother this loud before. Take revenge. This one was so loud it rattled around her skull and made her vision blur. Mother, what more do you want? The spell already... She bent her head down, black spots creeping into the edge of her vision. She was so tired. You cannot hide anything from me. What is this doubt you are nursing? You are hesitating. You are crafting another spell, you stupid harlot. That filthy Marquise is exactly the kind of monster I have been warning you about. You dare plan behind my back. I just don't want to kill anymore, Mother. Anymore. Whoa. What? She couldn't help but answer back this time. How could she not? After years filled with love and acceptance, it made her realize all the more how precious life was. The thought of snuffing out someone else's life sent a detestable shiver through her bones. She had planned on running away from this place, abandoning whatever duty that now fell into her hands. Why was it her duty anyway? She just wanted to take the good memories of this place and taint them no longer. Whatever truth she sought wasn't enough payment for peace. I don't want to. Good. Her voice shook. I don't want to kill him, Mother. I don't want to kill anyone, please. Is this cowardice or stupidity? You fancy him, don't you? You hate him, don't you? I'm gonna say you fancy him. Or maybe. The voice perturbed out into an abrupt, chilly silence. Rosa waited, sweat dripping down her brow. I knew it. You fancy him, don't you? You filthy... It's not like that, Mother. Past and present, rinse and repeat. Always a selfish little girl. Rosa was horrified. No, I'm not selfish. A selfish little girl that loves a murderer more than her own mother. With this final proclamation, Rosa was struck to the floor. The feeling of fainting was stronger than ever. Alone in the dark, she lay there, panting like a sick dog, waiting for what would come next. Guillaume killed me. He made me love him, and then he betrayed me. He deserves death. Only you can kill him. I can't kill him. It's what I want. That's not true. It is. You're my best friend, Rosa. Friends avenge each other, don't they? My darling daughter, I could always count on you to do the right thing. So kill him. Kill Gillamede. Kill him. Promise me. Make him suffer. Stab him with a knife. Stick a dagger down his throat. Gouge his eyes out. Take revenge. Rosa clutched her head so hard she thought her skull would burst. For a long moment, she lay as though she were dead. 5 minutes, 10 minutes passed. Then, in the middle of the empty room, Rosa's voice rang out as clear as a bell. I understand. I don't feel comfortable with this. Rosa knocked on Guillermede's door, carrying a tray of food. She had been poisoning his meals in small doses for weeks now, taking notes on any ill effects it yielded. There had been none. Guillermede was still fit and healthy as ever. No symptoms at all, even though she had increased the dosage. Either he hadn't eaten anything for a month, or he was immune to poison. Both possibilities were suspect. Rosa knocked again, but there was no response from the other side of the door. It may have worked. It was not a total loss, however. She remembered Catherine mentioning how particular Guillermede was with his sleep. She, just as she had been about giving up, she had ventured on this hunch. It was true, Guillermede was curiously rather sensitive to sedatives. Rosa had offered rose tea to Guillermede that afternoon, under the guise that she had made a new recipe. It had been laced with opium and valerian, sweetened with honey to mask the taste. Whether or not it was the casting of Phila, he had drunk it without second thought. He had retired early that evening. Rosa noted the grogginess visible in his gait. She snuck the master key this evening. Tonight is her night. Rosa pushed the door to his room open. It took a couple of seconds for her eyes to adjust to the darkness. It felt like a different world inside this room. By closing the door, it was as if he had cut herself off from the living. Rosa took an unsure step once she found her bearings. She placed the tray of food on the nearest flat surface, careful not to make any noise. The candle she lit provided little comfort. It seemed to cower from the intimidating blanket of shadows. Rosa heaved. The air felt humid here, the atmosphere almost stale. Now that she was inside and venturing deeper, a sudden impulse to find the door gripped her. She looked back. It seemed further away. Why was she so anxious? She had been in this room before. It was perfectly normal. Tonight, it was a different story. The room seemed to breathe. Rosa gulped. What a curious word. There was no other way to describe it, though. The flickering shadows made it seem like the walls were respiring around her. The room felt alive. It was asleep, like its owner, but alive. In the dim light of her candle, and the red carpet looked like flesh. The furnishings were viscera. Viscera? It didn't feel like she entered a room at all, but a belly. Something darted in the corner of her eye. Rosa snapped her head. Just a curtain. Rosa let out a breath she was holding in her chest, aware with every move her body made. She tiptoed towards the canopy. It was perhaps the highlight of the room, an organic monstrosity of red plush and velvet. From afar, it didn't look like the bed at all, but a cage. If the room was a cavern of meat, then this was its heart. Rosa approached. Every muscle in her body was tense. She could see a figure sprawled on the bed, limbs sticking out clumsily. He was lying on his chest, bare back, clothes littering the floor. Gildermead seemed to have fallen into the bed instead of climbing in. One of his arms stuck out from the mattress. His breath was fitful but slow, a light snore coming from him. What was that? Rosa looked around for the source of the noise, but the room was still. A slow trickle of sweat traced her spine. Did that come from the window? Should she check? Rosa didn't move. Something was in the room with her. She could feel it. She stole a glance at Gildermead. He hadn't moved from the bed. Rosa's ears tried to pick up the faintest noise. It felt like hours of her staying frozen on that spot, wishing to blend in with the darkness. But there was no one there. She had probably imagined it. She took a deep breath and calmed herself down. The sooner she was out of this room, the better. Phyllis' effects would diminish once the candle died. After that, she might not have another chance. She had to find out more about him tonight, and the thought of her goals helped steel her nerves. Where should she begin? She took a step. Rosa darted her head, looking for the source of the skittering noise. Her ears were too sensitive now. She heard every creak and moan in the room. She took a deep breath. Focus. Rosa surveyed everything. There was a book by Gildermead's bedside table. It was only a couple of steps away. Oh, I didn't read that. Sorry. As much as she could, she rather maintained the distance between her and the creature on the bed. Creature. Why did she think that? Perhaps it was the arrangement of the sheets, or the shadows playing their tricks, but Rosa shook her head. Perhaps there was another place to look? We've come here to gather information. You should check the book. Rosa sighed. Mother was right. She had to check every source to be sure. She inched herself closer to the bed. The faint candlelight indicated that the book was on the bedside was red. It wasn't the journal she had seen Gildermead write in. Rosa tiptoed her way closer. Gildermead's hands dangled mere inches away. She reached her arms towards the book and swiped it noiselessly. Noiselessly? I'm sorry, I heard something. That wasn't noiselessly. Just saying. The candle almost went out with her sigh. She backed up from the bed with the book under her arm. Adrenaline surged in her blood. It almost made her smile. Rosa examined her prize, a book in a foreign language. She remembered seeing such thin, obscure characters somewhere else. She wasn't sure which country, but it was probably Asian. She flipped at the book and saw a piece of parchment folded on one of the pages. A sailing permit for a barge named La Victoria, dated for the end of the month. 2 days from now. It outlined the cargo and the purposes of the trip, with no date of return. Traveling? No, leaving. Gildermead was planning to leave. This was a suspicion she had since she started observing him. His sudden aloofness with the town affairs, the secret purchase of a ship, the decrease of servants in his employ. Now it was confirmed. It's just as well we found this. We must end it tonight before he has a chance to escape. Although it was a good thing to confirm the suspicion, the fact helped her little. If anything, it just made it even more urgent to find something tonight. She had to continue. Rosa steadied herself and stepped back into the bed. Her hand finally brushed against the wood of the table after some quiet fumbling. She caught sight of something shiny inside the drawer. "Open it, child." Rosa pulled the drawer open ever so slightly. She peeked inside. Inside was an ornate dagger and a golden hilt set in with rubies. The old, delicate pattern was carved on its blade. There was a heat emanating from it, almost like it was alive, like the rest of the room. She almost missed it in the dim light, but there was also a key in the same cabinet. Let's take the key, please. Take the key and leave the dagger. I have a bad feeling about that weapon. Leave it be. Rosa agreed with Mother. The weapon was as sinister as it was beautiful. She didn't want to touch it. Rosa took the tiny key in her hand, feeling the cool metal against her palm. She pushed the drawer back. Gildermead shifted. Rosa blew the candle out. She scuttled behind the small table. It barely hit her. Gildermead had changed positions in his sleep. Now his face was in full view and facing her direction. Rosa's heart banged in her chest. It was so loud, she was concerned the room might echo the sound and announce her intrusion. Rosa waited for a few minutes before moving. She decided to crouch down, holding the unlit candle close to her chest. Easy now. She shuffled away from the bed in relief. The candle was dead, but her eyes were now well adjusted to the darkness. She could make out a desk in the furthest part of the room. He must do most of his writing there. There was a huge chance the journal is near. It wasn't very dignifying, but Rosa decided to crawl towards it. Now that Gildermead's face was in full view, a flutter of the eyelid was all it would take to catch her. It would be better to minimize her risk. She dropped to her knees and placed her palms on the floor. What was that noise? She drew her hand back. Was she imagining it? When her palms touched the floor, it felt warm, wet. Her fingers were stuck into the floor as if she touched soft, pulpy flesh. The hallucination was so strong that her nose detected a spray of iron in the air. Her stomach heaved. She rubbed her hand. There was no wetness or blood anywhere. The floor was solid. It must have been her imagination? Rosa touched the floor warily, patting it and pulling on the carpet fibers. Just a normal carpet. Rosa let out a slow, small breaths. As she started to move once more, she patted her way to the desk. Every time her skin came in contact with the floor, bile rose up her throat. It took some effort to resist the urge to gag. Finally, the desk was directly in front of her. She looked back at the bed. From this angle, it was hard to tell if Gildermead had moved. She hoped that the big desk also hid her in its shadows. Rosa rummaged. There was no trace of the book on the tabletop. She had only found a pot of ink, loose sheets of paper, and a quill. That damn thing had to be close. She opened the first shelf and found a stack of papers. Nothing. She shuffled through them, but the drawer didn't have the journal. She looked through the second drawer, and the third, and there was nothing of interest. Finally, she pulled on the last drawer. It was locked. Rosa sucked the air through her teeth. She had the key, though. Of course it's locked. How could I have been so stupid? Rosa slumped in the depressed heap. You have a key. The key. Rosa looked at the key in her hand. She slid it into the hole and heard the lock click. A deep feeling of relief washed over her. The drawer slid open. Rosa looked inside. There it was. In her eyes, the green journal was a treasure. She lifted the book from its resting place. It was heavier than she expected. Rosa smiled. She ran her hands along the velvet cover of the book, savoring the texture. At last she had it. Child. Mother's voice was riddled with anxiety. Something is wrong. Her excitement had clouded her senses. Almost at once she felt the change in the air. Everything was still. Her stomach shrunk into its cavity. Fresh sweat broke out on her scalp. This silence, it had weight. It pressed on her skin and made the air thin in her lungs. Rosa stood up. She had to leave. Now, Rosa shuffled her way out of the room, and with every step her legs seemed to stick uncomfortably to the floor. It slowed her movement. One more step. Her whole foot felt like sinking. She held onto the chair and staggered back. It was throbbing, musty and red, alive and without skin. The air was filled with an unmistakable stench of fresh meat. Rosa ran to the door. She didn't care that the handle seemed to curl around her fingers. She pushed the door open and spilled into the corridor. Rosa fell to her knees while she heard the door close behind her. It almost felt like the door closed by itself. In her confusion, she couldn't be sure. Rosa's heart pounded heavily in her ribs. Do the surroundings look different? I wonder. It seems all same, yet more dim, perhaps? She looked at the doorway, or maybe because that's nighttime, I don't know. Just looking at the doorway of the room made her skin crawl. Rosa gathered her wits and stared at the journal in her hand. She hoped it would contain the information they needed. Oh, we're already on chapter 6. Good intentions. It's only been 22 minutes. That's short. That's a shorter episode. I don't want the same thing to happen with the last chapter. I don't want to start this new chapter and have this chapter be like, I don't know, very, very, very long like the last one. I think I know why it was so long, because I think she was going through the parts of his life, and then they just wanted to put all of that together. But also, I don't want the same thing to happen again, and I don't want this to drag out too long. So, yeah, not a lot with this chapter. Like I said, I feel like they should have really took that last chapter that we played and just spread it out a bit more. But we have a book now, and we have a key, and there is an option to go back and take the knife. Let's just go do that and see if anything happens. That will be... I gotta save this in 19. So now, we're gonna go back. Alright, time to take the dagger. It might come in handy. Rosa closed the fingers around the dagger's hilt. A sudden feeling of repulsion came over her. She didn't want to hold the dagger any more than she wanted to hold a bloody human tooth. Yet, as Mother said, there might be use for it later. She extracted the dagger carefully from the drawer, keeping her eyes bouncing between her prize and the sleeping man. Finally, the dagger was in her hand. There was power in it, she could tell. The sleek blade glinted with sinister wink. Rosa placed it in her pocket. Gildermead shifted. Rosa blew the candle out. She scuttled behind the small table and Rosa sucked teeth through her air. Of course it's locked. How could she be so stupid? Rosa slumped in a depressed heap. Why don't you use the dagger to pry the drawer open? Rosa looked at the sharp dagger in her hand. The idea appealed to her more than returning to the bedside drawer to try the key that she didn't take. She shivered. The thought of approaching the bed again made her stomach whine in a tight knot. She might have to try this first. Rosa positioned the knife to pry open the lip of the drawer. The wood wasn't terribly thick, and with a little more prying, she felt the wood give under her force. Soon she heard a snap. The drawer slid open. Rosa looked inside. There it was. Okay, so we got it anyway. She lifted the book from its resting place. It was heavier, and she smiled and ran her hands around the cover. At last, she had it. Child. Mother's voice. Something is wrong. Her excitement clouded her senses almost all at once. Everything was still. I think it's all about the same. Rosa stood up. Oh, this is new. Another movement stirred the darkness. Were those footsteps? Rosa froze. She heard a sigh, a chuckle, a soft, amused whisper. Oh, I spy with my little eye. Her brain fired several commands all at once. Run, duck, hide. But her body was paralyzed by fear. Warm breath tickled her nape. She felt a hand reach out for her neck. Rosa turned. There was no one there. She scrambled from the floor, journal in hand, her eyes focused on the rim of the light bordering the door. She grabbed the knob and half expected it to be locked, but it turned, and she dashed out of the door, panting. Rosa was sure that any second now a hand would pull her back into that accursed room. A figure would be standing there, grinning from ear to ear. Little thief. She was so sure that the words almost materialized. Nothing came. Nothing stirred. The room was simply dead. Rosa finally caught her breath. She urged herself to move. There was no time to linger. Despite her shaky legs, she wanted it to put as much distance between herself and the room as possible. Rosa gathered her wits and stared at the journal in her hand. She hoped it would contain the information they needed. Oh, well, that was different. I'm glad I did that. Now we have 2 things to look at. Alright. So we're going to save right here. Under these 2. Alright. So I just have to remember the top part is where we took the key and the bottom half is where we took the knife. And then I will play out both endings and see where that goes. In the meantime, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate 47 subscribers now. Wow. Thank you guys so much. That means a lot to me. Like, really, really does. I hope you guys are enjoying this series so far like I am. Sorry this episode is a little bit shorter, but, you know, I'm pretty sure we're gonna get into some stuff in this next chapter. This chapter was a little pale, little like, you know, we're just walking around still and stuff. The room turns into flesh, you know, just some normal everyday stuff. You know, we almost get killed by some guy who's I don't know, Cupid or whoever. there's obviously a lot of things going on in this world, and I think I don't know, it probably has a lot less to do with mental illness and more of the supernatural, now that I think about it. Because, I can attribute all this kind of stuff to mental illness, but, you can't explain Rosa having visions and stuff of the other person's demons, and will the other person get to figure out how she sees her mother? Are we gonna be able to see how she sees her mother? Are we gonna see how she sees Amelia, or whatever her name is? I don't know. We're gonna figure that out next time, though, not this time. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you then. Goodbye.